We have a bit of a Bitcoin mystery on our hands. 80,000 Bitcoin. Just a casual 8.6-ish billion dollars worth of Bitcoin just moved. Now, was it an old whale? Just going back and digging into, did they just hold for 14 years? Well, it actually appears that it was not the original owner of those coins who has now moved them. In op return messages, in weird quirks about how the addresses were generated, and peculiar connections to the sequence of numbers in the old show Lost that suggested the end of the world. This is a really bizarre mystery. The op return of these transactions have a link to a law firm with an owner notice, a claim that if they can offer the private key showing that these are coins that belong to somebody else, that they can be redeemed if they do it before a certain date. Numerous things that suggest the original owner is not the one moving these coins. So is there a major cryptographic vulnerability in Bitcoin? Are tons of old addresses actually susceptible to this? Are Satoshi's coins at risk? Did quantum just break something in Bitcoin's system? Is this a hack that's trying really hard to look legitimate? Or did somebody just happen upon an old wallet with $9 billion worth of Bitcoin in it? Well, today we're going to do a little bit of digging, a little investigating, and we're going to see if we can't come up with an answer to the 80,000 Bitcoin mystery. It's time for a Guy's Take episode. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the show. I am Guy Swan, the guy who has read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know, and this is Bitcoin Audible. This is where you learn all about Bitcoin, about sound money, the economics, the philosophy, the history of cypherpunks and the internet, everything and anything around it. We cover it here and we do a deep dive. And actually, on that note, we've got a really cool technical stuff for all the nerds out there who love to really dig into the nit and gritty with me. There's a really fun article. It's not really the nit and gritty. We're not going to do something too serious, but there is a new signature aggregation scheme that has been proven that actually works with Bitcoin's native curve. And they just released, Kiara Bickers, I believe it was, released an article on Bitcoin Magazine, and we'll be doing that article. I actually already did the audio for it. I just haven't put the episode together. But we'll have a Guy's Take kind of breaking it down to try to make sense of it. It's definitely on the technical side, but it's fascinating, and it's actually a really, really big step. It's a really cool thing. And just so you know, for anybody confused about this, signature aggregation is not multi-sig. We're not talking about like we need, two of three, like you, me, and I don't know, BTC sessions. We need two of us to sign in order to release the coins. This is very different. This would be me signing my transaction and my input, Ben signing his transaction and his input, and you signing your transaction and your input, but us putting it all together and actually only having to put one combined signature on chain so that we can just pool our transaction and save money. And interestingly, this is a huge boon for things like CoinJoin and any and all privacy standards, because CoinJoin costs a lot more when you add tons of different signatures and tons of different inputs together, because you're all sharing this cost, and signatures are really kind of the heavy part of transactions. Well, in this case, CoinJoins would actually be more efficient. This is something we've talked about on the show. This is why I was so excited about Taproot, even though the signature aggregation scheme has yet to even be fulfilled with everything around Taproot. So it's really cool to see this. This is referred to as Dahlias, by the way, this new scheme. And it was two engineers from Blockstream and then also another from Ledger who put this paper together and has demonstrated this. Now, it would require a soft fork. But the really cool thing is not only is it super inefficient, it also doesn't require any major new cryptographic assumptions. It basically builds off the exact same thing. Again, it's Bitcoin's native curve. It's just a different way of essentially doing the verification process, which is why it would need a new consensus, a new set of consensus rules or system for verifying it. But it's built entirely compatible with the way Bitcoin is today. So maybe maybe that actually is a road to a soft fork with a really, really significant benefit and something that could finally realize a really cool feature and efficiency and security improvement to Bitcoin that I feel like has been highly desirable for a really long time, and that other improvements and soft forks that have been made in the past were really geared around hopefully getting to this point. So it's just a really cool thing, and it's going to be worth digging into, I think. So we will be reading that on the show. But today we have this crazy 80,000 Bitcoin mystery. And before we get into it, I just want to shout out Chroma for supporting the show. They are a sponsor, and they also have some amazing products. If you haven't gone down the kind of light health rabbit hole, it's actually been fascinating to me. And I was kind of skeptical at first until my wife and I actually were extremely regimented and strict about putting this all together properly, about getting all of our screens to go red at a certain time of day. And she wears her nightshades, her like blue light blocking glasses at a particular time. And I actually have mine on the way now. And it's just been, I was shocked at how much it changed and how much it has affected me and her, especially in like the ability to get to sleep, or me being like kind of an insomniac and having energy late at night for no reason. That has been being able to kind of shift and having my circadian rhythm feel in balance. You got to check these guys out. This is what their products are about. It's about having good hormone and light health, and they have a ton of really cool products to check out. And I have you a 10% discount with code BitcoinAudible, which you'll find right down in the show notes. And they accept Bitcoin on a special based website. That link you will also find right down there. Also, shout out to HRF, the Human Rights Foundation, and their Financial Freedom Report for not only just the amazing work that they do, but also I'm honored that they thought my show was worth supporting. We actually just had a fantastic conversation with CK all about the insane work that they do over there, and the Finney Freedom Award and their development fund. There's lots of details that you'll find. I urge you to listen to that chat episode if you haven't, but also just all the details and links and stuff to check that out and to sign up for their newsletter. Highly, highly recommended. And they are right in the show notes as well. And lastly, PubKey by Synonym, and particularly the PubKey ring. I want you to get a feel for how amazing their key system is and how powerful it could be if you had an address that anybody could find or direct to any of your content, any information that you wanted, whatever your hosting is, and nobody could shut it down. That it was just available in the BitTorrent network and there was nothing anybody could do. And if somebody wanted to find you by your ID, by your public key, anybody could. That is the power of a decentralized sovereign web. And the fact that this is lightweight and simple and modular, there's something really, really cool being built here. And I suggest you check it out. I've been on the PubKey beta for a while, and they just released it so that you can go to their website. The link and details are in the show notes, and I will have my PubKey up there so that you can follow me and give me a shout out and tell me what you think. All right, let's go ahead and get into this 80,000 Bitcoin mystery. So, what are the details here? A bunch of different addresses with the exact same balance, 10,000 Bitcoin, that have had, I went and, have been digging through mempool.space here. And there's a bunch of just like random, transactions being sent to them. Basically all the spam attacks and the little like tiny fee stuff have been sent to them over the years. So there's like a little bit more than the original 10,000 Bitcoin, but that original 10,000 Bitcoin has not moved the entire time. And that's an important piece of this puzzle, actually, because none of these addresses have been spent from, or at least the ones that I've got open right now and looked into. That was a big thing, is I wanted to know, have these been spent from, or have these literally been addresses unused, just as UTXOs sitting there untouched for literally 14 years? And they have. 2 of them are from April of 2011, and 5 of them, or 6 of them, I think, are from May of 2011. And again, 10,000 Bitcoin each. So about $1 billion in each address. This is either a legendary hodler who has not touched them for this entire time, or lost coins. And that's like a huge part of this, is that, how do you determine, or when do you call coins lost? Because I have absolutely seen people who have been holding from 2010, 2011, who never moved their coins, suddenly wake up and decide they want to do something with them, or they just move them to a new setup and they never even get, sent to an exchange or anything. But they are clearly there. They clearly exist. In fact, during the whole fake Toshi era, when fake Toshi claimed certain addresses as belonging to his, or belonging to him. And in fact, I think it was one of these, if I'm not mistaken, I saw somebody post about this, that one of these addresses is actually listed in the supposed Tulip Trust of fake Toshi, which just another confirmation that he just made all this crap up. But one of the other ones, in a totally unrelated situation, when he was claiming to be Satoshi, and it was noticed that that address that had been dormant for all of this time was that fake Toshi, that Craig Wright had claimed that this belonged to him. One of those addresses moved with an op return message that said Craig Wright is not Satoshi. So that was pretty cool. I mean, it should have been obvious then that all of this was just a total fraud by him. But the fact that one of these actually shows up in the Tulip Trust is also just like another funny piece of that little story. But yeah, so is this guy just massive hodler, and then now today randomly he decides to move his coins? Doesn't seem like it. It seems like the person who is moving these coins is not the original owner. So now the question is, how did this person get the private keys? All right, so here's one of them. So this is 10,000 Bitcoin you see here. So this is the transaction that went out on the 3rd. So this was just 4 days ago. On July 3rd, 2025. And you'll notice on the 2nd and then the 30th of June, there were 3 other transactions in very, very small amounts. And important to note is that this had an op return with details. So the first one shows legal notice. We have taken possession of this wallet and its contents. So this is a public notice that we own this, basically just like legal domain, that if you are publicly declaring that this is yours and you want quote unquote legal rights to it, this is the abandonment doctrine. This looks like a legal, at least to me, this looks like a legal defense that says, here is our public declaration with our legal team backing it, that we have claimed ownership of this, and if you are the rightful owner, you must come forth. And then them using whatever legal precedent is in their jurisdiction, or maybe they're just kind of setting up their own legal precedent because there isn't really precedent for this yet when it comes to Bitcoin, is that, okay, we are establishing these terms, we are making this fully available to you, we are publishing this as publicly as we possibly can. This is about taking ownership of these coins in a legitimate and what they appear to think, or probably hope, a legal way, so that it rightfully, quote unquote, belongs to them, and they have sufficiently given notice to the original owner who they hope has abandoned these coins so that they can acquire them. But there's another little bit of oddity in this, and a couple of articles and people I've seen are speculating that there's some super mystery and this is like really crazy. But after these coins have been sent out, another transaction from basically in line with this, so 10,000, the 10,000 Bitcoin addresses were emptied, and then another transaction from that location was then sent with another op return. And this also appears to be present in every single one of them. I will go back and I'll share my screen so that we can see this. So, all right, so this is, again, for people watching the video, if you want to see the video, this will be on Twitter as well as YouTube and Nostr natively, so you can go watch it and you can see what I'm talking about here. But so this is the 2011 creation of it, and then this sends it out. And it sends this 10,000 Bitcoin. They actually broke this one 11,000 Bitcoin balance into one with 10,000 Bitcoin. Now you click on this one, and this first sent all the 10,000 Bitcoin. That's the coming in. What's the current balance? Pending balance 0. Where did the 10,000 go out? Oh, that's 704. Okay, so this was the 10,000 Bitcoin going out. And then there were 2 additional transactions after that that's bringing this down to, there's only $1.83. There's only 1,690 sats left in this address. But there was another op return that has 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. A number sequence in the op return. And they all seem to have it. So here's the other one that has the 10,000. So here's the 10,000 going out on 704. So we're going to go to that address and then look at its op returns. And okay, so this one has 210K in op return, which is that's an odd thing to put in the op return. But just after, again, so here's the 10,000 Bitcoin coming out, and then we have another. This is an inscription. Actually, let me look at that one. I didn't take a notice of that yet. Then the next one has the op return again, 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. These are the numbers from the season of Lost that were showing up all over the place, and like supposedly it was like the end of the world. I never actually watched Lost, and I watched a couple of episodes or something, so I have the idea. But what's interesting to me, a whole bunch of people are speculating that this is some sort of mystery or allusion to what's going on here, but I almost wonder if this might actually have something more to do with how these addresses were discovered, maybe, or maybe this had something to do with the generation of the keys for this, because Lost was a show that was popular in, was it 2006 to 2010? So it was during the time in which 10,000 Bitcoin went into these addresses that this sequence of numbers would have held significant cultural relevance, and it was kind of the talk of the town, kind of the Game of Thrones of the era. Which makes me wonder if there was like some random number generator and this being used as some entropy in the creation, and maybe this was hacked in that way, or this was recovered in this way. But that also kind of makes me wonder about the whole, going back to the idea that if this was an exploit, you really wouldn't want to leave it open for someone else to also get this exploit and then get those coins, because now everybody's going to be looking for this. And if those numbers are significant, like, why would you publish those numbers if these are actually significant to the recovery of the Bitcoin themselves? Because, you could maybe show that, for the person who used to hold the wallet, it's like, we figured out that these numbers are relevant. And so, we generated the private keys based on this. But if you're giving that information out publicly on the chain, well, then people are going to be trying to use those numbers. Like other people are probably going to be wondering if this is an exploit. Okay, what do I need to... I've got 90 days, right? I've got until the end of September 30th or October 5th, according to the Solomon Brothers notice, to prove that I could have the private key as well, and that this is actually my balance, and these are my coins. You wouldn't, if these were yours, you wouldn't want that to be the case. So if you had just hit an exploit and gotten into this wallet, you would neither want to reveal or give time for someone else to get the exact same exploit and take the coins or prove the coins, and then you now have a big legal battle over whose are they if it's an exploit. So not only do you not want that, but you certainly wouldn't reveal sensitive information that was critical to that unless it was information that only you were using, if it was relevant to this. There is one interesting caveat about this, though, that does suggest there is just somebody nerding out and maybe creating a narrative around this or trying to send a message, is that the deadline, October 5th, 2025, which I'll actually get to in just a second, this is the deadline for them to actually recover or claim ownership of the coins, actually happens to be exactly 20 years after the orientation episode of the Lost show, which is the episode where the significance of those numbers are revealed, aired on TV, October 5th, 2005. But whatever the significance of that is, it is interesting and a little bit weird. Like, what was the point of the lost numbers in all of this when the first three op returns for the original transactions were all about legal notice and, basically making public declarations about the ownership of these coins. So, and then of course the 20 years after the release of the episode in which those numbers were shown. The significance of those numbers were revealed. Which on that, I'll just read the notice really quick. So this is the notice on the Solomon Brothers website /owner_notice, which again seems to be down at the moment, or it just shows a 404, like as if it's not there and there's just a blank website. So they've taken it down, I guess. But it says, this digital wallet appears to be lost or abandoned. Our client has taken constructive possession of it and seeks to determine, probably not the first language, and seeks to determine if there is a bona fide owner. A legal notice is posted pursuant to and in compliance with applicable law, which is intended to provide an opportunity for the owner to claim property otherwise qualifying as lost or abandoned. The owner is provided 90 days to respond to this notice. In other words, an owner with valid proof of ownership must respond before October 5th, 2025. If no response is received, the digital wallets and their contents will be considered to be confirmed as abandoned. In sum, the lack of a response may be provided to a court as evidence of the relinquishment of all rights, title, and interest in the digital wallets. This is an important legal notice, and rights could be adversely impacted if the bona fide owner of this digital wallet does not respond. Provide proof of ownership either by using the private key associated with the wallet in any on-chain transaction, which allows the owner to signal ownership while maintaining anonymity and costs an owner nearly nothing, or 2, sending Solomon Brothers a message using the contact form, see below, with a detailed description of your valid claim to ownership, including supporting documentation. Messages can be sent by owner or by owner's representative to maintain anonymity. Send a message via the contact form below. Client seeks ownership right, blah, 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 blah. Henceforth, no shall trespass upon, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's basically the gist of it. And this all seems to be a way to, like, in my mind, this would be a way to, like, I would be super defensive. I'm about to come into $9 billion. Governments hate people finding money. And also the legal, like, I would desperately want to protect myself legally around this. And again, this is part of why I just I'm not 100% sure about the exploit narrative. There's at least not very strong evidence of it yet. And if it was an exploit, the fact that it would be like one wallet or maybe one tool with just a few different addresses, this was in the end just 8 UTXOs. So it's not like, hundreds of different addresses are being compromised with tons of different amounts. If this tool was compromised, it might have been a very specific tool or a very, like a script that somebody wrote, some super cypherpunk nerd wrote for themselves and made an error, made a mistake in the entropy, and maybe somebody was just literally mining old addresses and transactions as hard as they could, trying to figure out how to generate private keys from whatever, I don't know, an assumption of some error, or maybe there was some past exploit in random number generators, and somebody has just been using that and comparing it to addresses in the blockchain, hoping that they stumbled upon something, which could mean that all of these addresses were associated, and maybe they were part of the same wallet, or they could actually be separate ones with this same tool used on some website or released on GitHub or something somewhere. Like, who knows? But I'm less inclined to think this is some very serious, as number of speculation, that there's some very, very serious core system of Bitcoin from the early days, risk or exploit. And if we did see that, then I would expect, they did all 8 of these at the exact same time. So do they do another batch later? Like, why did they wait until they had all 8 if this is an exploit where they're just slowly getting addresses? Did they check every address in the first 3 years of Bitcoin's history and they couldn't find it? But if they're using an exploit that allows them to generate private keys from not sufficient entropy, basically, how long has it been that they haven't found one that they think they found all 8 of them? Or are we going to see this again? In 2 weeks, are we going to see another? That might be the real question here, if around that particular risk is, does another address with 1,000 Bitcoin or 23,000 Bitcoin, does another address from that era move in a week or two with the exact same notices and legal framework around it that suggests that this could just keep going as this exploit is continually exploited. Something that's really crazy though is the number of people, like after this happened, I was digging through the transactions, like going to this, there's inscriptions where like one dude's like, congrats man, this is a huge find, and all this stuff. By the way, just maybe send me a little bit since I sent good vibes your way. And there's another one with an op return that says it would be a tiny amount for me. It would be a tiny amount for you, a life-saving amount for me. And a whole bunch of people just sending them like that 690 sats and stuff, like kind of dust threshold sort of stuff, just to stick messages in the chain. Like literal, every single one of them, people just begging for coins from this, which is just like, it's literally panhandling. Like one dude was like, please just send me one Bitcoin. That's all I need. And then there was another one who just sent the same, because I was trying to figure out, like, sometimes it's kind of confusing when you're looking at this, which ones are sent out and which ones are sent in for, who has the private keys. When you're looking at addresses, it can be confusing if you hadn't done it in a while. And one of them, like somebody put on an inscription, did those same numbers again for 868, whatever they were. So it's just funny, I guess, and just ridiculous, the number of like tiny transactions that have already flooded into these balances after they moved of, please give me some. Please, I want some. But looking at the transactions, there's actually something interesting that I thought that nobody pointed out. Which actually, maybe that had to do with the address. So if you look at these different addresses that actually have the balances now, they're all P2WPKH, which this is just like the new segue. It's the BC1 address. It's the one that you see commonly now. Another BC1. Let's look for the word. Okay, here we go. This one goes to this guy, WPKH. 10,000. So here is the one that's interesting, is this is holding over 10,000 Bitcoin now out of one of them. But the odd thing about this one is that this is a 1. This one starts with a 1. This is the P2PKH. This is the same address format that all of them were paid out to, which suggests this was sent to a different wallet. Because, when you pick a wallet or you create like your derivation path, you decide your transaction type. So I just found that kind of interesting, is that it kind of looks like they sent a bunch of them to the same wallet, or maybe they sent them all to completely different wallets. Maybe every single one of these has a different seed phrase and different private key. It's $1 billion a piece. It probably makes sense to do that. But I just thought it was interesting that they chose something completely different, and they went with an old standard. In fact, they went with the standard that the P2PKH standard that was the address type that these were being spent from. Another kind of indication that, it's certainly not P2PKH addresses that are being exploited here, which again doesn't quite really fit that. The structure here doesn't seem to fit that narrative to me anyway. More that it would be some explicit tool or bad entropy that somebody created, and somehow this was, finally exploited. Now, what I'm not so sure about is the fact that there was one address that has the F word in it. So it's FUCK randomly in the address. Now, one of the articles I was reading was suggesting that this shows how hard they worked and that they generated an unbelievable amount of addresses in order to create this, and how explicit it was to show, they're trying to show a cryptographic puzzle or something here. And again, the lost numbers are interesting, and I don't quite understand, and even the people who are speculating this is some like super narrative and message and stuff, I haven't heard any indication as to what really the significance of those numbers is in this context, outside of, we figured out something terrible or something. But I don't know. It is an odd thing, and I probably wouldn't think anything of the fact that one of the addresses then associated with other transactions around this had FUCK in it. I actually would not find that totally out of the ordinary, or I would assume it was a coincidence, because the likelihood of producing any particular 4-letter word, I think, was it's been a minute. I should have confirmed it, but I think it's like 1 in like 400,000 or something like that. Whereas a 3 or 4 letter word isn't totally uncommon to show up in the address. It would be a crazy coincidence that specifically FUCK showed up in these addresses related to these balances. So this very well could be a vanity address, and whoever is doing this clearly knows what they're doing. They're just throwing stuff into op return regularly. They were testing, and they were prepared for this entire process to unfold very, very quickly in a matter of a couple of hours. They had set all of this up beforehand. They had consulted with a legal entity to make sure that they could have protection. They are probably ready and waiting with lawyers if a government comes after them, or if somebody, some claimed owner comes after them or something. So they seem very, very prepared. That being a vanity address is a little odd, but considering there is already the oddity of the numbers from the show Lost, I don't know, maybe that does seem a bit of a stretch that both of those kinds of things are coincidences. And we've got the October 5th, 2025 as the deadline, which is related to the show. Just a lot of really quirky things about the whole situation. But outside of the suggestion, or outside of the narrative that, this is some very serious exploit and Bitcoin is vulnerable or certain address type is vulnerable, I don't find that likely. It could be some old software or some tool or script that had very poor entropy, and likely something not used in mass, or it seems odd that these addresses would all be done at exactly the same time, and we wouldn't have a ton of others, or, I guess probably just time will tell when it comes to that. We'll see what happens in a few days, in a few weeks. Do they do this again with a different set of addresses? And, then if we see this again, that would be concerning from the context of old coins. Okay, what tool got compromised? What wallet service, what wallet generation or key generation device or software got compromised, and how many coins are literally at risk because of this? What it feels like to me, and what seems to make the most sense, especially considering these all have different private keys. They were all done in one batch, and it seems very possible and very likely that these could be associated with each other. I'm inclined to think this is all one wallet. This is one person's wallet, and this was somebody had come across a laptop or a computer or whatever with a wallet on it that had these coins in that wallet. And interestingly, with a lot of the old wallets, and I actually stumbled upon this myself not too long ago because somebody was trying to get me to recover coins, and I kind of dug into it trying to recover some coins, but their wallet was encrypted, so I couldn't send a transaction. However, there was actually a text file that just showed the generated addresses. So I could see the addresses with the relevant wallet-related files without actually being able to get into or decrypt the wallet itself with the private keys and all of that stuff. So I could go onto the blockchain and check the addresses, and there was no actual Bitcoin in any of them. And we think that the person was just mistaken. They probably used a blockchain.info wallet or whatever way back then when, and they thought, they had some wallet with like 1 or 2 Bitcoin in it, which was no big deal at the time. And I was digging up all my old installers because I've saved versions of Multibit and Electrum and God knows what from way, way, way back when, just so I can recover stuff for people if it ever comes up. But no luck on that one. But the wallet had apparently never been used. But it makes me wonder if someone had gotten access to something like this, saw that these coins were there or that this wallet was there, managed to probably brute force them maybe for years, trying to get into this thing, got into the wallet, and then were just extremely careful. They're like, holy crap, this is this absolutely frightening amount of money. Like, someone will kill me for this, literally. Has happened numerous times. And so they set out to protect themselves, get legal defense, before maybe they hadn't even broken into it yet, and they knew or were aware of the balances that they were trying to get into, and so they started legal defense and stuff at that point. But then they broke into it, and they were preparing things, and then they decided on, I guess July 4th, to go through all of this, post these transactions, post the op return, and be like, all right, 90 days from now, October 5th, 2025, because they're a nerd from, Lost or something. Or maybe that would be funny if the local password to the wallet.dat file was actually those numbers from Lost, which would be an interesting reason for them to have actually posted them in the op return, because publicly it wouldn't be a threat, because the assumption would be that you have the wallet.dat and nobody else has the old file. And so they can't decrypt anything with it. But maybe that was the password. Maybe that was what they finally brute forced to get into the wallet. And that was another kind of statement to the previous owner, like, is this you? This is how we got into your wallet. And it's just something that nobody else would know, but they might know. The actual owner of these coins might know. And maybe either whatever, brute force generator, like, whatever password brute forcer they were using, either knew, they were aware of the significance of those numbers. They looked them up afterward and realized that, Lost was, this was a significant thing in a show. And so they made the dates around this like relevant to it. Again, maybe as a message to the owner, not to everybody else. I don't know. Really hard to say. But clearly whoever is orchestrating or putting all this together knows what they're doing when it comes to Bitcoin. And, may very well have generated one of those addresses with FUCK in it, because that would suck. That would suck to lose all of that Bitcoin if somebody had gotten into your wallet. And of course, if I had gotten into a wallet with that amount of Bitcoin, I would probably say the F word a lot of times in multiple different concepts, out of sheer fear, out of excitement. That word would come up a lot, and maybe I would generate a bunch of vanity addresses, especially if I just spent a long time, brute forcing passwords. I got a computer that's just hashing and crunching away at a bunch of stuff. Well, I'll just generate a whole bunch of random addresses, and here's one that says this word that I've said 2,300 times in the last 24 hours. So, maybe that's just somebody screwing around. Really hard to say, but that's kind of the narrative that fits for me right now, as I wonder if somebody just has had a computer or device or an old wallet that they just finally broke into, and this is their way of like, okay, I have to make it public now. This is do I have all my ducks in a row? Crap. This is going to be hard. This is scary. All right, I'm going to publish it. Here's the legal notice. Here's the website. Here's who you contact. Now, fingers crossed, and I'm going to pray that nobody says anything until October 5th. And these are mine, and that I can defend myself from the government and from everyone else and protect my privacy as I watch all of these transactions and inscriptions and op returns come in begging me for just a couple of Bitcoin, brother. Just a little bit. And it also makes me wonder if, do they dump them all, or do they just stick them in cold storage? It is at least a really interesting story. Really interesting little piece of everything that's been going on lately. Because, they could dump them. They could just market sale, dump them on the market, and, cause a pretty little hefty price dip. I think that's kind of stupid. And if you were this serious about protecting it, you would probably also be very slow and meticulous and careful about exiting any of it. But if you're also a Bitcoin OG to the point that you're throwing op returns in, you're making vanity addresses, and you're also using P2PKH, an AP2PKH address to hold them, you're not really worried about them being taken. That person clearly thinks they have the setup, and they might, sell some because life, and you actually want to access your capital. But also, they seem to be a Bitcoiner, not somebody who's desperate to get a whole bunch of fiat in a bank. And they also seem to be a little concerned legally as to how do I protect myself. The last thing, if I had stumbled upon all of that and I actually knew Bitcoin as well as this person definitely seems to know it. The last thing I would want is $1 billion in fiat. Trying to figure out what the heck to do with that and how to move it. Like, dear God, no. I would be keeping it in Bitcoin and using the tiny little extra shallow portion of it that I possibly could. So I think the fears of, somebody's going to dump $8 billion of Bitcoin all of a sudden it's not a good strategy. This person seems very careful, or these people seem very careful with how they're doing this. And it's stupid from a market price standpoint, but it's also just stupid if you're this knowledgeable about Bitcoin to not want to keep the Bitcoin. That also lends itself, I think, to either the direct tool or like kind of somebody made bad entropy exploit, but also possibly to the I have an old wallet in a laptop or a computer that I purchased and I'm trying to get into it. Because you're clearly from that I would gander that whoever this person is may actually be from the 2011, 2012, maybe all the way back to 2010 era of Bitcoin, very much knows what they are doing. Maybe they're from the 2013 era and this is when they found the wallet or they had the computer. And so they stumbled upon this on a hard drive that was thrown away or included in something that was, by accident, and somebody else has lost this. And they've spent all this time learning about Bitcoin, trying to get into it, maybe. Who knows? Actually, there was another piece of the puzzle that was relevant to this. Is apparently one of the addresses paid out to a counterparty address, which counterparty is a really old, like kind of layer 2, you could say. It was one of the first like tokens on top of tokens for Bitcoin and a smart contract platform for Bitcoin. It's not trustlessly pegged to it or whatever, but it was one of the early attempts to do that. And it was always an interesting project to me. But it never seemed to get off the ground. Everybody just went to shitcoins and altcoins because you can issue your own tokens out of thin air and make millions of dollars off of nothing. But they sent some to one of the counterparty addresses, one of the official counterparty addresses. So it's an indication that, again, they're aware of that and that might be meaningful to them to suggest what era of Bitcoin they are from. And if they're from an era that's anywhere near around the 2011 zone, well, then it's very possible that they just stumbled upon or have a machine that has a wallet on it. And they are the luckiest damn people alive, willing to do the hard work and scared and trying to protect themselves so that this Bitcoin that they found might actually end up belonging to them rightfully, or legally, I guess is the better term, because they just don't want someone coming after them and governments. My inclination was their biggest fear is the government. And it would be mine, is that, I stumbled upon this and now the government comes in. Like if you just find, $100 million worth of gold in the walls of your house, that is not going to be yours. It's not, you go to court with, the previous owner or whatever. There's been multiple stories of this. Government will come in and that is the government's money. So the question is, what happens when you stumble upon $9 billion or $8.6 billion in Bitcoin? And how do you defend yourself from that? That story seems most likely to me. And maybe they're a nerd and they really like the show Lost. Hard to say. It'll be really interesting. If it is an exploit, we would see more. We will see more. And so it will be something interesting to keep an eye on for the next coming days, weeks, months. What happens after October 5th? Do they move the coins again? Do they do another batch from a different wallet, etc.? So I'll let you know. Stay tuned. Subscribe to Bitcoin Audible. We'll be talking about it if some more news heads our way. Maybe we'll do another guy's take, or I'll just do an update and we'll discuss it on the roundtable. I'm curious what Mechanic and Steve and my brother have to say about this one. But with that, thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed this guy's take. I hope you learned something. I'll have some links in the show notes so you can check out the transactions to an article and the Solomon Brothers stuff. If you have any other, actually I totally forgot this whole element of it, but somebody on the Bitcoin Talk forums from like a million years ago, back in, I received 10,000 Bitcoins 10 years ago, but it was a private key on my old computer, October 5th, 2021. That one's less. This one was from August 10th, 2013, but it's two different addresses or two different people claiming one of the addresses as this is mine, Does anybody know how we can reclaim them? I'm inclined to think, you just go look at 10,000 Bitcoin addresses and, just like Fake Toshi, just Craig Wright also put one of them in his Tulip Trust. And then the same thing with a different one that the OG, did the op return of Craig Wright is a fraud. I'm more inclined to think that those examples on the Bitcoin Talk forums are just people just saying stuff. And, I used to have this 10,000 Bitcoin. Can anybody help me out? Because, 10,000 Bitcoin even in 2013 is like 30 grand, 40 grand, something like that. So, or wait, no, that would be 2011. I'm an idiot. 2011 is when it was in the $30 range. So 2013 was like 1,000. So that's $1 million at that point. I mean, yeah, you don't just like, oh, I forgot about that. And, I didn't think it was important. Now I need to, can anybody else help me out? Like, it was a lot of money when you were saying that it was irrelevant to you. But I have the link to those forum posts if you want to kind of dig into those. And somebody actually found the user on X, and there's fresh posts up there of people talking about like, whoa, maybe he found them. Have you contacted them? Blah, blah. But they're clearly indicating that they don't have the private keys. So granted, one of them said that he sold the laptop and, now he was trying to get back into it. How do I get my private keys back? So maybe it's actually true, and he didn't even realize that he had, 7 more addresses with 10,000 Bitcoin in them. Totally forgot about that, because if you forgot about one batch of $33,000 worth of Bitcoin, maybe you forgot it 7 times, and maybe that's the laptop with, as he said, like almond butter on the keyboard. And that's the one that other guy has been hacking into or trying to break into for years and years and years. And they finally broke in, and he's just hoping and praying that the guy on the Bitcoin Talk forums never found his private keys and tries to claim it. So anyway, fascinating story. Interesting stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on all the socials and follow the podcast. This is Bitcoin Audible. This is where you will find out everything about Bitcoin. And I'm the guy who's read more about it than anybody else Don't forget to check out Chroma. I have a 10% discount, Bitcoin Audible, all about light health, blocking blue light. I highly suggest you start going down that rabbit hole. You check that out. I think it's made a huge difference for me, and I think it's absolutely worth checking out. They also have the Bitcoin website based.getchroma.co, I believe it is, but link will be in the show notes if I screwed that one up. And check out PubKey. The beta is live. I will have my public key in the show notes so that you can find me up there. This is the best of BitTorrent and the web combined, and of course HRF and their amazing newsletter for everything staying up to date for the fight for freedom, for financial sovereignty, for monetary sovereignty, the news and politics that are threatening it, and how Bitcoin and the other relevant tools are protecting it, and what those are. It is an unbelievably valuable resource, and I highly recommend it. With that, I will catch you guys on the next episode of Bitcoin Audible. And until then, everybody, that's my 2 cents.